You need to cancel your honeymoon right now and babysit your sister's kids. Dad said I was getting married in 72 hours. Okay, imagine this. What if 72 hours before your dream wedding, your own father stood in your kitchen and, without a shred of irony, demanded you cancel your entire non-refundable honeymoon to babysit for your sister's cosmetic surgery? That was the moment I realized their family emergency was just another weapon, and my no was about to set off an explosion that changed everything. My name is Max, and I'm 33 years old. That scene, my dad standing there like he was delivering a court summons, happened right in front of Elena, my incredible fiancé and our wedding planner who was on speakerphone for crying out loud. He just expected me to drop everything, like I was some unpaid family labor, while I was literally finalizing seating charts. To truly understand how we got to that boiling point, I have to take you back, way back to the beginning. I grew up in a house where love felt less like an emotion and more like a transaction. It was all about usefulness. My dad, Oleg, worked for the county for almost 30 years. He carried that do-your-duty energy into everything, including parenting. My mom, Irina, was a nurse, warm and loving in private, but in public, she treated our family like a perfect brand image that had to be maintained. And then there was Alina, my sister, 2 years older than me. Alina was always the sun in our family solar system. Loud, pretty, dramatic, and somehow perpetually in a crisis that demanded immediate funding, babysitting, emotional support, or usually all three. Me. I was the quiet kid, the one who did his homework without being asked, stayed out of trouble, kept his head down. Adults love that kind of kid, right? You can just ignore them, and they still turn out fine. One of my earliest memories, I must have been about 8, was sitting at the kitchen table with a science fair project. Cardboard, glue, glitter, the works. I was so proud I could barely sit still. Then Alina walked in, tears streaming because she didn't get the lead in a school play. My mom didn't even glance at my volcano. She swept Alina into a huge hug, murmuring, "My poor baby." And my dad, he just looked at me and said, "Max, clean up your mess. Your sister needs us." It was always framed like that. Alina needs. Max can handle. When I was 15, I made the varsity soccer team. My dad promised he'd come to my first home game. He didn't. Alina had a panic attack because a boy didn't text her back, so my parents took her for ice cream and called it family time. The next day, my dad patted my shoulder. "You're tough," he said. "Your sister is sensitive." At 17, I got a scholarship offer to a really good engineering program. I still remember holding that letter, my hand shaking, convinced it might just float away. My parents were happy for exactly 1 minute. Then Alina announced she wanted to find herself at a private, out-of-state college that cost a fortune. Suddenly, my scholarship wasn't my win. It was convenient. It meant they could pour money into Alina and still call it balanced parenting. The only person who ever said the quiet part out loud was my Uncle Victor, my mom's older brother. He wasn't rich or flashy. He owned a small auto shop, always smelled like motor oil and peppermint gum. He'd look at me over his coffee and say things like, "You're not a spare tire. Max, don't let them keep you in the trunk." I used to laugh because it sounded like a weird joke, but he was the first adult who made me feel seen, instead of just managed. Fast forward, I did the whole responsible kid thing. Worked hard, got my degree, moved to the DC area. Climbed my way into a role that made my parents proud in the only way they understood. A job title. I'm an engineer by training, but I shifted into HR and operations. Turns out I'm good at untangling people systems, compliance, fixing broken processes. I work for an international company with offices across the US and Europe. My job is basically half technical, half keeping humans from suing each other. It's stressful, sure, but it pays well and I'm good at it. I live in Washington now. In a row house I'm slowly turning into a home, instead of just a crash pad. And then there's Elena. She's the kind of person who actually enjoys planning. She planned our wedding like she was building a small, beautiful universe. My only job was to show up and not mess it up, which apparently is too much to ask if you're my family. The older I got, the more the family pattern shifted from emotional favoritism to outright financial dependence. It started small like it always does. When I was 24, my dad called. Alina's short on rent just for this month. You know how expensive everything is. I sent $600. It felt like the adult thing to do. 2 months later, Alina's car needs repairs. She can't get to work. I sent $900. Then it was, your mother's credit card got a little high because of medical bills. I sent $1,200. I started noticing that medical bills somehow included spa visits and boutique receipts. My mom accidentally emailed me the wrong attachment once. When I asked about it, she got offended. Are you auditing your own mother after everything we've done for you? That phrase, after everything we've done for you, was like a key that unlocked guilt on demand. Alina got married to a guy named Dennis. He played the role of charming, capable provider in public, but in private he was just a confused, helpless man-child. They had 2 kids, Masha and Lev, and suddenly every conversation became about childcare. Alina would call me, crying, completely overwhelmed. By the end of the call, I'd be committing to taking the kids on Saturday so she could rest, and also sending money because Dennis's paycheck got delayed. Dennis's paycheck was always delayed, like it had a personal grudge. One year, I actually added it up. Between random transfers, paying for emergencies, and covering family shortfalls, I had sent about $24,700 in 10 months. That number made me feel sick to my stomach, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I hadn't even noticed it leaving. It was like financial bleeding you don't see until the floor is suddenly slippery. So I started keeping records. Nothing dramatic, just a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, who asked, what they said it was for. My Uncle Victor would call me on Sundays, asking how work was going. One day, I mentioned the spreadsheet like it was a joke. He didn't laugh. Good, he said. Paper beats poetry. Feelings won't save you when they rewrite history. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. I would. When Elena and I got engaged, I, stupidly, thought maybe the family dynamic would soften. Weddings make people sentimental, right? They talk about love and unity, they get teary, they behave. My family treated my engagement like an opportunity to negotiate my time and money. My mom's first question wasn't about Elena's ring or our plans. It was, will you make sure Elena has a role? She'll be devastated if she's not important. My dad's first question was, how much are you spending? Don't be wasteful. Meanwhile, my parents had just helped Alina upgrade to a bigger house because the kids needed a yard. They didn't have the money, but they had the confidence. The down payment was a loan from my parents' retirement account, which I found out about because my dad casually mentioned it and then asked me in the same breath if I could help replenish their savings. I asked Elena what she wanted our boundaries to look like because she's smarter than me in the ways that matter. She said, your family treats you like a resource, Max. I don't want our marriage to start with me watching you get drained. We agreed on something simple. We'd pay for our wedding ourselves. We wouldn't borrow, and we wouldn't let anyone attach strings. We also booked our honeymoon early because it was the one thing we both wanted to be truly ours. No opinions, no committee, no family needs. Bora Bora wasn't a random flex either. Elena had a photo of those turquoise lagoons taped inside her childhood journal. She grew up in a small apartment and used to say she'd swim in water that looked like glass one day. So we did it. We saved. We planned. We paid the deposits. Between flights, resort transfers, and excursions, the total was right around $23,600. Non-refundable past a certain date, which was, you guessed it, right before our wedding. The week of the wedding arrived like a tidal wave. Last-minute meetings, final fittings, calls with vendors. My job was also in one of those chaotic periods where every global office suddenly remembered HR exists. So I was juggling compliance fires while trying to pretend I was calm. Then, 72 hours before the wedding, my dad called. Not texted, called, which in my family meant something was serious. I answered because I was still that kid who cleaned up the mess to keep the peace. He didn't say hello. He just said, "We need you to cancel your honeymoon and watch your sister's kids." I actually laughed at first. It was so ridiculous, my brain treated it like a joke, just for self-defense. "What?" I said. "Alina scheduled her surgery for next week," he said. "Family emergency." Elena froze mid-step in our living room. She was holding place cards, her hand still. "Surgery?" I asked. "What surgery?" My dad's voice got sharper, like my questions were an insult. "It's private. She needs support. Dennis has work. Your mother and I have appointments. You're the only option." I was staring at Elena, and she was staring back with that look that says, "Please don't do it. Please don't reflexively do it." I said, "Dad, we're getting married in 3 days." "I know," he snapped. "That's why you have time. You can reschedule the honeymoon. Just call and move it. And if you can't, then you'll eat the cost. That's what family does." That was the first moment something in me clicked into place. He wasn't asking, he was assigning, and he was perfectly comfortable spending my money in his head. I said no. The silence on the line was immediate, heavy, like I'd slapped him. Then he did what he always does when he thinks he's losing control. He escalated. "This is a test of loyalty, Max." He actually said it. "You can't start your marriage by abandoning your sister." Elena's mouth actually dropped open. She looked like she couldn't believe someone would say that out loud. "A test of loyalty," I repeated, slowly tasting the phrase. "Okay." My dad heard something in my voice and tried a different angle. "Your mother is very upset," he said. "She says Elena is changing you." I looked at Elena. She didn't say a word. She just waited, like she was letting me decide who I wanted to be. "What surgery is it?" I asked. My dad hesitated. "Just a fraction." "Reconstruction," he said. And that word was so carefully chosen, it made my skin crawl. It sounded serious. It sounded noble. It sounded like a way to shame me if I didn't comply. But I've worked in HR long enough to know that when someone gets vague, it's because specifics would ruin the story. "Send me the details," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "What hospital? What doctor? What paperwork? If it's a family emergency, I need to know what I'm walking into." He snapped. "Don't interrogate me." "Then don't draft me," I replied. He hung up. 5 minutes later, my mom called, crying so hard it sounded performative, like she was reading a script she'd rehearsed. "Max, please," she wailed. "Your sister is scared." "What's the surgery, Mom?" I pressed. "She doesn't want everyone to know," my mom sobbed. "Mom," I said, my patience wearing thin, "I'm not canceling my honeymoon blind. What's the surgery?" There was a pause, and then a softer voice in the background. "Alina," she didn't sound scared. She sounded annoyed. "Tell him it's my mommy makeover," she said, like she was ordering coffee. My mom hissed something at her, like she'd said it too loud. I blinked. "Mommy makeover?" I repeated, disbelief washing over me. Alina snatched the phone. "It's not your business, Max. It's elective, yes, but I need it. My body is ruined. Dennis isn't attracted to me anymore." I almost lost my temper right then, but what I felt more than anger was clarity. "Alina," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "you want me to cancel a $23,600 honeymoon 3 days before my wedding to babysit because you booked cosmetic surgery?" She snapped back. "It's not cosmetic. It's medical for my mental health." "That's not how insurance codes work," I said, and then immediately regretted speaking like HR. My mom came back on the line, trying the guilt again. "Max, your sister has done so much for you." I laughed, but it came out sad. "Name one thing, Mom." My mom went quiet because we both knew the answer. Then my dad called back, not to apologize but to threaten. "If you don't do this," he said, "don't expect us to show up for you." Something in me felt weirdly calm. "Dad," I said, "you're already not showing up for me. You're trying to take." He started yelling about respect, about family, about duty. And I let him talk because I wanted to hear the shape of the truth. It wasn't love. It was entitlement. While he was talking, I opened my spreadsheet. I scrolled. I saw the transfers. I saw the patterns. I saw myself shrinking year after year to keep them comfortable. Uncle Victor's words came back. Paper beats, poetry. I texted him one sentence. "They want me to cancel honeymoon to babysit for Alina's cosmetic surgery." He called immediately. "Put it on speaker," he said. So I did. My dad was still lecturing me when Uncle Victor's voice cut through. "Oleg," Victor said, "are you out of your mind?" There was a stunned pause. My dad hated being challenged, especially by someone he considered beneath him. "This is family business," my dad snapped. "It became family business when you tried to steal his honeymoon," Victor retorted. "Max is not your employee. He is not your nanny. He is not your bank." My mom tried to cry again. "Victor, don't make this worse." Victor's voice was firm. "Irina, it's already worse. You're asking your son to pay the price for your daughter's vanity." Alina screeched, "It's not vanity." Victor ignored her. "Max," he said, "tell them no and send me your records." My dad barked, "Records? What records?" And that right, there was the moment I realized they'd never expected me to keep proof. They expected me to be grateful for scraps of approval and too ashamed to track the cost. I looked at Elena. Her eyes were shiny, but she wasn't crying. She looked proud and exhausted, like she'd been holding her breath for years, and finally exhaled. My dad said, "Max, this is your last chance. Do you choose your sister, or do you choose selfishness?" He actually said selfishness, like my marriage was a hobby. And I could have argued. I could have explained. I could have begged them to understand. But I didn't want understanding anymore. I wanted freedom. So I smiled, even though they couldn't see it through the phone, because the smile was for me. I said, "You said it's a test of loyalty." "Yes," my dad said triumphantly. I said I failed. Then I hung up. I blocked my dad. Then my mom. Then Alina. Then Dennis. Then the aunt who always texted, "Family is everything," right after asking for money. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, like I'd finally stepped off a ledge I'd been standing on my whole life. Elena whispered, "Are you okay?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm done." The next 72 hours were a blur. My family didn't show up to the rehearsal dinner. They didn't help. They didn't send a message. They had clearly decided that their absence was punishment. But the funny thing about boundaries is that once you stop asking for permission, punishment loses its teeth. My friends showed up. Elena's parents showed up. Uncle Victor showed up in a suit that didn't quite fit and a tie he clearly hated. He stood next to me like a guardrail. The wedding itself was beautiful, small enough to feel real, big enough to feel like a celebration. When I looked out at the chairs and didn't see my parents, I felt a pinch of grief, because you always grieve the family you wanted. But then Elena took my hand and squeezed, and I felt the truth of what I was building. After the wedding, we got on a plane. Bora Bora felt like stepping into someone else's dream. The air was warm and salty, and the water was so clear it looked fake. Elena cried when we first saw the lagoon from the boat, and then she laughed at herself for crying. And then I laughed too, because I'd never seen her that free. We took photos on the overwater bungalow deck. We ate fruit that tasted like sunlight. We swam at night with the lights under the water, glowing like a private galaxy. On the second day, Elena posted a picture of us in the water, her head on my shoulder, both of us sunburned and smiling like idiots. I didn't think about my phone. I didn't check. I didn't care. Then later that afternoon, I opened it out of habit. 147 missed calls. dozens of voicemails, texts from numbers I hadn't blocked yet, because apparently my family had recruited cousins like a call center. One message from my mom, from a new number, said, "How could you do this to your sister? She is in pain. You're ruining the family." Another from Alina said, "If something goes wrong in surgery, it will be your fault. I hope Elena is worth it." A final one from my dad said, "When you come back, you will apologize. You will make this right." And there it was again. The assumption. The ownership. Elena saw my face. "What is it?" she asked. I handed her my phone. She read the messages quietly. Then she looked up and said, "Do you want to respond?" I said no. I blocked the new numbers. We went back into the water. I won't pretend I didn't think about them. I did. At night, when it was quiet, I imagined my mom telling people a story where I was the villain. I imagined my dad's anger fermenting. I imagined Alina making herself the tragic heroine in a situation she created. But I also imagined something else. I imagined what it would feel like to stop being available for being used. When we got back to Washington, reality hit like cold air. There were more calls, more messages, more family members suddenly very invested in Unity. One cousin wrote, "Your parents are devastated. They paid for everything for you growing up." I almost replied with my entire childhood in one paragraph, but Victor's voice echoed in my head again, "Paper beats poetry." So I sent one sentence. "Please direct any further communication to my attorney." Yes, I got an attorney. Not because I planned to sue them for emotional damage or anything dramatic like that. I got an attorney because I've learned that people who feel entitled to you don't stop at guilt. They escalate. They show up at your house. They call your job. They try to create consequences. My attorney helped me draft a simple notice: no contact, no harassment, no showing up at my home or workplace, and any attempts would be documented. Uncle Victor also helped me do something practical. We went through my financial records and closed every open pipe. The family phone plan I'd been paying for because it was easier. Gone. The monthly help payment my mom claimed was for utilities. Gone. The credit card I'd co-signed years ago because my dad said it would build family credit. Closed. And then we did the hardest part. We pulled my bank statements and matched every transfer to the spreadsheet. It was worse than I remembered. In the last 2 years alone, I'd sent just under $25,000. That 22 to 25K range I used to vaguely estimate in my head wasn't me being dramatic. It was real. It was money that could have gone to my own emergency fund, my own home repairs, my own future kids. When I saw it all lined up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt embarrassed. Not because I helped, but because I let helping become my identity. My family reacted exactly how you expect. First came rage. My dad left a voicemail from an unknown number calling me ungrateful and saying he'd never forgive me. Then came bargaining. My mom tried to show up at my house on a Saturday morning with pastries, like she was resetting the scene. Elena opened the door, stepped outside, and closed it behind her, which is a small thing that somehow meant everything. She didn't invite my mom in. She didn't offer a chair. She just stood on the porch, calm. My mom said, "I just want to talk to my son." Elena said, "You can talk to his attorney." My mom's face twisted like Elena had slapped her. "You're turning him against us." Elena didn't raise her voice. "No, you did that." My mom started crying, and Elena didn't move. My mom finally left, furious that tears didn't work. Then the relatives who took their side arrived. An aunt, a family friend, someone who hadn't said my name in years, all suddenly concerned. They all used the same lines. "Your parents are older. Your sister has children. Family is family. You'll regret it." I started answering the same way every time. "I'm not discussing it. Please talk to my attorney." It made people so mad, which was honestly how I knew it was working. They didn't want a boundary. They wanted a debate they could win with guilt. The The weirdest moment came 2 months later. I found out through a cousin, who still spoke to me, that Alina's surgery went fine. Not life-saving. Not tragic. Fine. She posted selfies after her recovery, talking about healing and self-love. And in the comments, she hinted about toxic people who don't support mothers. I stared at the screen and realized something that changed how I saw everything. My sister didn't want support. She wanted control over the narrative. She wanted the power of making me jump. My dad didn't want family unity. He wanted obedience. My mom didn't want peace. She wanted appearances. And I didn't want to be the guy who funded and fixed their choices while they treated me like a disposable tool. The last time I heard my dad's voice was through my attorney. He wanted to mediate, which in my family means you apologize and we pretend nothing happened. My attorney told him no. After that, it got quieter. Not magically, not all at once, but quieter. Elena and I started living like we weren't waiting for the next emotional invoice. We cooked dinner without checking our phones every 5 minutes. We spent weekends doing boring, happy things like walking through farmers markets and arguing about paint colors. Uncle Victor came over one Sunday and helped me fix a stubborn cabinet hinge. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just worked beside me in comfortable silence. At one point, he leaned back, wiped his hands, and said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. I thought about Bora Bora water and 147 missed calls. I thought about my dad's test of loyalty. I thought about my mom's tears like a weapon. I thought about my sister's entitlement dressed up as emergency. And I said the honest thing. "I feel lighter," I told him. "And I hate that it took this long." Victor nodded. "It takes as long as it takes." That night, Elena and I sat at our small dining table and signed papers for something boring and adult. Updating beneficiaries, organizing our accounts, making sure our future was protected. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. But it felt like peace. I used to think walking away meant I was cruel, that it meant I was giving up, that it meant I was failing some invisible exam everyone else passed naturally. Now I see it differently. Walking away wasn't revenge. It was survival. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're truth with consequences. And real family isn't who can demand the most from you. It's who shows up with respect, who treats your life like it belongs to you. I didn't go to Bora Bora despite anyone. I went because I was getting married, and I chose my wife, my future, and my own self-respect. If that meant I failed their test, then honestly good. I choose who gets a front row seat in my life. This entire ordeal made me realize that sometimes a family emergency is just code for your life doesn't count. And the relief, the sheer lightness, when you finally choose yourself, it's indescribable. I wasn't being selfish. I was just exhausted. For 33 years, I absorbed chaos because my family assigned me one role. The fixer, the bank, the one whose needs didn't count. My parents measured love in usefulness. My sister measured it in access, demanding I cancel a $23,600 honeymoon for elective cosmetic surgery wasn't about childcare. It was about power. My father's test of loyalty revealed everything. Loyalty meant my unilateral sacrifice while funding my sister's choices. When I finally said, I failed, I rejected a rigged game I'd played since childhood. Family emergency loses its meaning when everything becomes an emergency, except your boundaries. Max's family weaponized urgency to bypass his consent. Real emergencies don't require manipulation. If they can't ask without guilt, it's not help, it's extraction. The people angriest about your boundaries benefited most from you having none. The 147 missed calls weren't concern. They were rage that their designated resource shut down. They weren't upset he went to Bora Bora. They were upset he stopped being available for use. Walking away isn't cruelty when staying requires you to abandon yourself. Max didn't punish his family. He chose his wife, his future, his dignity over people who only valued him when he bled himself dry. Sometimes The most loving thing you can do is let people experience what life looks like when you stop volunteering to be their solution. So, after hearing all this, tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a line with family members like this? I really want to know what you think.